This is Everyday Expertise, and I'm Angela, and I'm here today with Miko Charbonneau. She's the founder of indie studio Pretty Smart Games, which recently released their new game, Code Romantic. Hello!
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. How did you get started in game development?
Yeah, so I was really interested in games from a young age. My
Mm-hmm.
dad had a lot of games in kind of that first era of PC gaming. So we had Apple IIes, Amigas, Commodore 64, and I would play games with him all the time from a young age. And
Mm-hmm.
I also was really interested in writing and art. I wrote my first novel when I was 5, but it was only a paragraph long. um, so I think I both loved like the artistic, creative side and the
Mm-hmm.
technical side.
Mm.
Um, I started making websites when I was 12, and then I wanted to go to school for computer science. So I ended up going for computer science and mostly focusing on getting a job as a programmer at first,
Mm-hmm.
because I think I sort of believed that like it would be too hard to get a job in the industry, or I wouldn't make enough money. And I
Mm.
was just kind of like shut that door for myself at first.
Right.
Um, and it wasn't until I went to grad school that I started taking these courses on like using Wiimotes for gesture recognition and making games around that,
Mm-hmm.
that I decided to kind of fully pursue my passion to be a game designer.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up getting a PhD in computer science where I studied dance game interfaces. Um,
Okay.
yeah, and then from there I was like really focused on getting a job as a game designer.
That's cool. So, do you have any major influences? Any games or developers that inspired you to make your own games?
Yeah, I think I'm really inspired by people who I've seen speak about their work. I get really
Mm-hmm.
excited hearing about the person and like the passion behind it. So
Mm-hmm.
I really have in the past loved listening to Jane McGonigal and Brenda Romero talk about why they make games. Jesse Shell as well is a great speaker, and I love a lot of the projects he's done.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I play a lot of games. Probably one of my favorite games of all time is Persona 3.
Mm-hmm.
I really love how they use like the characters and kind of made you fall in love with them as the game
Mm-hmm.
progresses. But I also just play a lot of games, especially interesting narrative games. I'm really intrigued by, especially like indie titles are more
Mm-hmm.
experimental. I
Mm-hmm.
also love tactical games like strategy RPGs, um, mobile games. I'm very curious about new game systems and how people are applying them. So I try
Mm-hmm.
to like always keep my mind open and just like play things I've heard of and see how they're solving problems. So
That's pretty awesome.
thank you.
So, can you describe Code Romantic for someone who's never seen it?
Yeah, so Code Romantic is a post apocalyptic love story that teaches you how to program. It is in the category of visual novels.
Mhm,
So it is a game where you're going to be reading and watching a lot of story scenes. And along the way, we give you coding puzzles, and you don't
mhm,
have to know anything to start. Sometimes I refer to it as the game I wish I had when I was 12, when I was first starting out and I was curious about technology. But sometimes, like I took a class when I was 13 in C++, and I was pretty young, and everybody else in the class was a boy who was 16. So they sort
mm,
of didn't appreciate having this younger girl in their class that didn't know anything because it was a class, but
mhm,
they actually already knew a lot about coding. So I think like about that a lot, and I think like how much I wish I had seen like people that look like me coding or felt like
mm,
it was something that I could do. I felt I could do it because of my dad and all the times that we hung out together doing technological stuff. But I saw like when I went to school, um, in undergrad, there were just a lot of girls that felt like they couldn't do it or dropped out.
mhm,
Sometimes even before they took the a test, placement test, like they didn't even find out if they had passed. And I feel like a lot of people I knew that weren't coding. that were my friends would also say things like, "Oh, you're so smart. I'm stupid. I could never do that." And so I think over time it just sort of occurred to me like I wish there were more ways to explore teaching how to code.
Mm,
There's a lot of great games and a lot of great systems already, but I had never seen an approach like this where maybe you want to read a story or experience a story, and that might be enough incentive for you to get over your fear of trying. Um, and so that was really kind of our main goal was let's try to make a story that we believe in with characters that we really love, and let's help other people feel less nervous about trying something that may seem scary to them.
mm.
So
That's interesting. Well, that sort of brings me into then, what about the sort of the romance slash sort of visual novel format made you think it was a
yeah.
good fit for the subject?
Yeah, I think at first we didn't know it would be a visual novel. I think a lot of it came from my inspiration in finding a really great artist that happened to be a
Mm-hmm.
2D artist. Her name is Allison Kelly. And when we met, I hired her for a different game project, and she had
Mm,
never made a game before. She was a traditional watercolor illustrator.
mm,
And I just really loved her artwork. I loved the way that she approached things, and I thought this would be really interesting to see in a longer game like Code Romantic. So I think a little bit of it was what are we capable of doing like as a very very small team.
mm,
The team for the game was just two of us, um, myself and my husband Dale, and Allison Kelly the artist, and then we also hired a composer.
mm-hmm.
So we could have made it a 3D game, but we knew that that would be much more challenging for us to hire
Mm-hmm.
3D artists and animators and environment artists and everything. So I think, yeah, we were a bit limited just saying like, what could we do to finish this project?
Mm-hmm.
But then also just being very inspired by her work. And also, I love visual novels. I play a lot of them. A lot of them are either like dating sim category or they are like murder mystery category, sometimes both at the same
Mm,
time. Um, and I think I just felt like that would be a really fun format because I love
mhm,
so many of them. So
mm. Did you feel also it would be sort of a good way to, in a way, hide the teaching part in a way?
I mean, I think, yeah, it's almost
Yeah.
like a good education game. You're trying to balance, like, it has to
Mm,
be motivational and fun enough that you'll want to play it.
mm,
And you also want people to feel like they're actually getting the educational content out of it.
mm,
So we definitely spend a ton of time on like, can we make this a really fun story? Can we make you like these characters? And then also like every chapter, we try to put like just enough of a hook that you're like, oh, I want to play the next chapter now.
yeah.
I want to know what happens next.
Mm,
So like quite a lot of work was spent on that side,
mm.
um, as well as the teaching side.
That's cool. What is your biggest hope for the game?
Oh, you see, I'm like wondering if I'm going to tear up a little bit in this interview because I'm a person that cries a lot and gets very emo easily. Um, a lot of times when I was working on the game, when I was playing the prototypes and writing
Mhm,
the story, I was just really inspired by the main character myself, who is
mhm,
a girl named Mina, who is actually quite smart, but very insecure about her own skills. And she doesn't think, somebody that she has a crush on would ever like her. She doesn't think she's anything special, but throughout the game she sort of grows
mhm,
to realize her own power and her own abilities.
mm,
And I think like I just remember thinking so many times like I really hope that other people playing this like connect with her, and
mm,
that maybe they think like, hey, like if she did it then I could do it.
mm,
I think one thing that I thought about a lot was like just other young people, or really any age, would they play this and then say, maybe I could become a programmer, and sort of like reverse if anyone had ever said to them that they couldn't, or maybe they just
mm,
saw a lot of like TV shows of like a hacker sitting in the dark with a hoodie on at the computer and thought, I don't want to live like that, and didn't even think about becoming a programmer. I think like that's kind of my dream.
Mm.
And I'm really happy already. We've had a couple of parents tell us that they've had their daughters play, and that now they're like teaching their. One of them is saying he's teaching his daughter C++ because she finished the game and she wants to know what happens next in the story, and so he's trying to like keep her busy with other coding.
Mhm.
That's really special to me. That's like kind of I couldn't get a better compliment than that. I think that we actually could help people be excited about it.
That's pretty awesome. So you've recently shipped the game. How was your experience with that so far?
Yeah, well, so our little indie studio,
Mhm.
we've pretty much always been doing it just like when we make a game as a hobby, we would release it as our little indie studio.
Mhm.
Because myself and my husband both work professionally in the industry. Um, so we've released about 20 something small apps and games.
Mhm.
And I sort of emphasis on the small. Like I'm very excited about how many products we put out
Mm.
there. But a lot of times, what we would do was like an experiment,
Mhm.
um, and through doing all these tiny like let's do a game jam in a style we've never done and then ship it, or like let's make this app for Android that is like
Mhm.
kind of in the style of something we've seen, or it's just something that we want on our phones and ship
Mhm.
it. Um, I feel like that is a very important part of even if you're a hobbyist indie or you want to make it a professional career, like want to make this into your business,
Mm.
is just getting things out the door and learning that last bit. So we actually shipped a previous Steam title called Phantom Feast, which is a
Mhm.
casual action game. And for that one, we didn't intend to do like a really big like marketing campaign or anything. We just wanted to learn. Of course, we want people to play the game, but we were like, let's do this smaller game,
Mhm.
and that not a lot of people know we're making, because there were other people that had been playing the Code Romantic demo at that time.
Yeah.
Let's just use this game and learn about Steam because it was a platform we
Mhm.
hadn't done before.
Mhm.
So through shipping our first Steam game, we learned a lot about how many weeks it takes to get something out on that platform. What do they expect for the store? Like what images and descriptions you need, and just other things that like just little uh, quirks, I guess I'll say. Every platform we ship to has had its own quirks with how they want things done on the back end. Um, so I would say, at least for the shipping part, it was
Mhm.
pretty smooth for Code Romantic because we were fortunate enough to understand itch.io and Steam well,
Mhm.
and we kind of worked back from when we wanted to ship and made sure we hit the deadlines we needed to hit in order to get it in the store in time. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think that that was all pretty smooth. I also believe a lot in cutting is shipping. So of course there were a few things that I wanted to get in, and we're gonna, roll those out as an update soon. But at the end of the day, like you have to respect your own sanity. Even if you're an indie, you can't crunch yourself to death.
Mhm.
So um, I think it's really actually kind of exciting as a designer to see what are the things that you're willing to let go of. Like I feel like
Mm.
that sort of shows your maturity as a designer, and as a your own
Mm.
producer, right?
Yeah.
Having to be both roles at once.
Of course.
So
Mhm.
just trying to get like um, the game that you feel happy with, and
Mhm.
knowing that it's okay if there's a few rough edges because you can still fix them. It's
Mm.
okay. So yeah, so I'm pretty happy with how it all went. Um,
That's good. How's the response been so far?
it's been really good.
Mhm.
I think that you never really know what's going to happen. As a creative, you're both eager for feedback and you want to always get better, but you also, I think, have to be very careful about when you read the feedback, or you might crush yourself when you're in a very like open-minded creative space mentally.
Mhm.
Um, so, I mean, I think one thing we're really happy about is we haven't heard of any huge technical issues with
Mhm.
the game. So that's
That's
always a
good.
huge relief. You never know when you ship something if, some people will write back and say, "Oh, on my device, it just doesn't work at all. This is terrible."
You know?
Um, I I'm very fortunate to have a great Twitch community. I
Mhm.
started streaming game development on my Twitch channel, which is Dr. Mikachu or Dr. Mikachu. I started streaming game development on there a
Mhm.
year ago, and I
Mhm.
did it because I wanted to be braver about showing things before they were done. I think a lot of us are perfectionists, and we don't want
Mhm.
anyone to see our work till it's finished. But I also know that people really love seeing things in the process. Like they like to see how
Mhm.
something is made. So I'm very thankful for like these people that were previously strangers that just showed up in my channel and started hanging out and liked, how the game was going. And a lot of them are now streaming the game on their channels. And I thought that would be very sort of scary to watch,
Mhm.
I think, especially with your writing, it's a little scary to see everybody give it voices. But it's good to go through that. So I've actually been really enjoying watching them play the game and watching them give voice acting to the characters and enjoying it. And it's also kind of fun to be like, knowing that many of them don't know how to code, but they're still trying the game and they're trying to do it on their channel live is pretty impressive to me, because I know it can be very scary even if you're not streaming to a live
Mhm.
audience. Yeah, so I think that's something I've definitely been enjoying, is watching all of that.
That's pretty cool. So, Miko, what is something you wish you'd known about game development before you began?
I think that there's making the game, and then there's selling the game.
Mm.
And I previously had a lot of creative knowledge and I
Mhm.
had a lot of technical knowledge, but I've always felt like I don't quite have that business marketing knowledge. Um, and I didn't go to a like game development course in college where that might have been part of the curriculum. So I think about that a lot. I think at the very beginning, I was like, is it even possible for me to finish a game? Like, that's kind of your
Mm.
first hurdle. And then your second hurdle is it possible for me to create a good game? And once you feel like, yeah, I've made a game that I think is good, of course, I can always do better, but I've
Mm.
made a game that I'm proud of, then you realize, okay, it's very crowded market out there.
Mm.
People's attention is always divided. And how will I let people know about what I made? And how will I convince them that it's worth spending money on it?
Mhm.
For some people, they may never need that. If you're making games as a hobby or you're making games as art, I do consider the games that I make to be um, art in a way. Like a lot of them are about personal experiences I've had, or they're things
Mhm.
that I want to see in the world. Um, but you if you want to make it into something that is your full time focus, you
Mhm.
do have to think about, how do I make this sustainable? Um, and so I think that's the big thing. Um, Something that one of my friends said to me that really stuck with me is, if you knew how hard it was in the beginning, you never would have tried.
Mhm.
And I think that's true about Code Romantic. At the beginning, it was our biggest game. It took many years, where our other projects usually take about 6 months.
Mm.
Um, I think it's almost like the opposite of your question. I'm glad I didn't know how hard it was, because I might not have even started the game. Like if I had
Mm.
thought at the beginning, this is going to take many years. Your artist will have to like love you enough to stick with you this whole time. You will have to become proficient at these things in Unity. You will have to become really good at understanding Steam and get it into that marketplace. I might have not even tried to write the story. So, in a way, I feel like maybe it's also good at the beginning to not know
Mhm.
because you can accomplish things that seem crazy or impossible. Um,
Mhm.
a lot of things that seem impossible only seem that way because you've never seen them done before. And if you break them down into small enough pieces, you'll start to find pieces that you can do right now.
Mhm.
So I think it really becomes a question of how much do you want this project to exist? Um, and it's okay if it takes a long time sometimes.
Well, that's good. It's a good thing to know. How do you cope with stress or obstacles in the pursuit of your work? How do you deal with crunch? Have you had any crunch on this project?
Yeah, so I've experienced a little bit of crunch in my professional career working at other studios.
Mhm.
Thankfully, not too much. And then for this game, there are definitely times where I put a lot of the burden on myself.
Mhm.
Since I'm the leader, if I hear that someone that we're working with on the game is just like they're not going to finish a thing, then I tend to take it on myself. I'll just take all their tasks and I'll triage them and say,
Mm.
okay, these 15 we're not doing. These five I think I could address without this person having to do all of the work of the full picture. We can
Mhm.
address the problem.
Yeah.
So I definitely think I'm hardest on myself. I think that it is important to know though, like you have to be your own producer. Like you have
Mhm.
to take care of yourself because if you don't, you're not gonna be able to finish.
Mm.
Um, so I do try to set realistic deadlines for what we make. Um, we very rarely set like this is the day it's coming out. We actually did that this time.
Mhm.
But usually we have like internally we'll say, hey, in 3 months we expect all the content to be done for this thing. And then if it
Mm.
slips a little bit, it's fine because we're focused on the deadline, but we're not killing ourselves for it.
Mhm.
Um, I think that I also think it's really important. I am a definitely a workaholic, so I have to
Mhm.
plan like rest and research time. But I do think it's really important. I think if you're not um, doing things other than gaming, then you're not letting like new ideas in.
Mhm.
Uh, so we do ballroom dancing, and we do like let's see. I mean, we do still play a lot of games, but I also listen to music a lot. Music's a
Mhm.
really important part of my creative process and it can completely change my mood. So if I'm feeling stressed, I have certain playlists that like immediately pick me up. They're kind of like get back out there. It's okay. This isn't the end. It's not as bad as you think. And like I make myself listen to that stuff if I'm feeling really down.
Mm.
Um, and then I also have other playlists I listen to that just like help me be productive, like just the way that I interpret those songs. Oh, sorry, I wiggled the
Mhm.
webcam. Um, the way that I interpret those songs just
Mhm.
makes me feel like motivated to work. And I almost don't even notice the music. I'm just like, go, go, go. Like I'm really focused with certain
Mhm.
playlists. So that really helps me.
That's awesome. I think it's a pretty good approach, I think.
Thank
Cool.
you.
Do you ever get block? Like creative block?
Interesting. I actually have so many projects.
Mhm.
We have our own Kanban board at home that has
Mhm.
like everything that's just an idea, everything that's like I started making a design document. This one's a
Mhm.
prototype. This one you can actually show to people. This one we're actively trying to ship. So I find that I don't really get block. What
Mm.
I get is, oh my gosh, I have to spend the night working on this novel series that is not going to come out in years. Like, I'll suddenly, like, my brain will just be like, we saw a movie and there's a scene from that movie, and I'm inspired and I have to make this prototype now.
Mhm.
Um, And I have learned that I just don't argue with that now. I just accept that sometimes I need a break from the current thing we're focusing on to try something else.
Mhm.
And this, I think, usually ends up being a good thing because then later, if I want to start that project, there's
Mhm.
already a lot of work attached to it.
Mhm.
So I think that's more common for me is I'm just
Mhm.
excited about a whole different thing.
That's good. I find there's definitely there's sort of, well, there's obviously a spectrum, but there's definitely like two different kinds of people, right? There's the people who get block, and the people who don't get block, who just have an overabundance of ideas. Mm,
Interesting.
mm,
Yeah, I'm definitely an overabundance of ideas. I care a great deal about shipping, but I also
mhm.
feel less stress because there's always like more ideas lurking that have not shipped yet. So,
That's cool. So, do you have a favorite aspect of making games?
oh, a favorite aspect of making games. I've heard before people describe it as like designers or maybe developers in general. Um, they're either beginning people, middle people, or end people. So you
Mm,
either like the concepting, the building, or the shipping and getting it out the door.
mhm,
I try to be good at all those things, but I'm definitely a beginning person.
mhm,
I have like a lot of curiosity. I really like to make games that I've never seen before.
mhm,
And so a lot of times when we have an idea, it's like just not weird enough for me. um, so I'll be like, what could we add to this? Or like, what's like a mechanic that should be in here that I've not seen before?
mm,
Or like what kind of things could we prototype to make this better, or like maybe it should have like a crazy amount of endings, or maybe it should have like a musical sequence. And
mm,
I'd always start to add just like the craziest stuff to it, and I don't scope down at that point. So I think
okay.
it's one of the most fun parts. It's not till like the building of it that I'm like, okay, you have to keep some of your crazy ideas, but you can't keep all of them. So which ones are we willing to give up?
Mhm. So, do you have a least favorite? Something that frustrates you about game
Oh,
making?
yeah, I feel like some people may be surprised by this, but
Mhm,
well, maybe not. I really feel shy a bit about the social media stuff.
mm,
I feel like other people that do community management are so good at it. And I do maintain like, our social media platforms, but I find it gets very draining. Like
mm,
I'll spend like a couple hours making this GIF that I think will be really well received, but then I like can't come up with anything funny to put with the GIF. And um, I also spend a lot of time when I update the mailing list that we have. Uh, I never want to bother people because I personally don't like getting constant mailing list updates, even from products I
mm,
love. And so we really only send it out once every few months just to be like,
mm,
hey, this is what we're doing now. Except, with the launch, we sent a couple more because we
mm,
want people to know when it was
of
coming out.
course. Yeah.
But I even then, like, I'm sure I was supposed to do it like on launch day and the day after and the week after, and I just didn't feel like I was like too drained to do that. Um, yeah, so I think that's where I have trouble is like trying to keep up with when people message me, when there's comments about the game, and just try to like put more of our content out there.
Mm, that's understandable.
Yeah, it's a skill for sure.
All right. We've talked about a lot, but do you have any more advice for people starting out in game development?
Oh, yeah. I try to actually give a lot of advice on my Twitch channel because I find there's a lot of people curious about game development. And kind of similar to how we design Code Romantic, I think a lot of people think it's just too hard.
Mm,
And and it is hard. I don't want to say it's easy. It's not easy. I would say that it's not unachievable.
mm,
Um, I think I always want to see more people making games, no matter what their background is,
mhm,
because I think that um, games is a type of media, interactive. experiences. It's a type of media. It's not a genre. It's not like, hey, it's only for people that like fantasy stories or only for military people that want to kill each other. It's not that. There are games like that. But there's lots of other types of games out there, and there should be
Mhm.
even more. So I would
Mm.
say, like, if you are a creative and you've never made a game before and you thought, well, that's too hard, I would love for those people to think, just start dreaming of like, well, what would it be? What would maybe you're an interior decorator and you're thinking, okay, like what would it be like to make a game about interior decorating? Or my experience having crazy clients that want all this wild stuff done in a week. Um, Maybe you're a doctor or a nurse and you want to tell a story about people you've met that were your patients, or
Mhm.
you're a gardener. I think it could be really interesting for more types of people from different backgrounds to think of themselves as someone who can make interactive media.
Mm.
And we do talk a lot on my channel about game engines. If you are already a programmer, there are game engines that you're going to pick up really fast that you can code in. But there are also a lot of game engines that, yeah, they have less capability, they
Mhm.
have less features. You won't necessarily know how to add game mechanics without coding, but you definitely can make an interactive game um, without knowing how to code.
Mm.
Um, and I want to see more of that. I would really love to see composers and artists and dancers and all sorts of people being like, I don't know, maybe I'll make something, and just like filming themselves doing things and using that as content, or composing a song and writing an interactive fiction story about the
Mm.
song. um, it's out there. I'm not going to say it's easy. Again, there's a lot of technical hurdles, but it's 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 more in your grasp than you think it is.
Well, that's interesting and very true, I think. All right, so what is up next for you in Pretty Smart Games? Mhm.
That's a really good question. Well, so right now we have several prototypes that I'm playing around with because I'd like to do a smaller project to ship probably in the next year, just to
Mhm.
kind of have like something that didn't take years to finish. Um, I'm looking at essentially, I'm just letting myself be open minded and see what is a thing that catches my eye. So I'm doing a lot of small prototypes
Mhm.
and um, showing them to my Twitch community and just kind of saying like, hey, what is kind of the thing that seems like it's got traction?
Mhm.
We are working on Code Romantic 2. It has always been planned to be 3 games long
Mhm.
because we planned a story that was too big for one game. So we're going to be starting that this summer.
Mhm.
Um, and then I have another project that I think will also take several years to finish.
Mhm.
Right now, I'm calling it Project Lonnie. It is a simulation game. My chat calls it The Sims meets Stanley Parable. Uh, but it's essentially very autobiographical to me. It's a
Mhm.
game about this time in my life that was like a year after a tragic event happened to my
Mhm.
family. And I sort of wanted to explore like how, I guess, how I see myself at this like much younger age and all the
Mhm.
emotions I was going through, but also with some like absurd wackiness where you can kind of like walk around this house and you could like cook poorly and start a fire in the kitchen, or you can actually do some pretty strange sci-fi stuff that I don't
Mm.
think you can do in real life. um, but maybe I'm right. Maybe if I try to make this in my simulation, we'll find out that
Mm.
other parallel universes exist in our reality too. You never know.
Mm.
So so yeah, those are kind of my big projects, and then doing some small projects.
That sounds cool.
Thank you.
How can people find out more about you then and your company?
Yeah, so one of the easiest ways to reach out to me is on social media,
Mhm,
even though I said it's hard for me. I'm pretty active on Twitter as
mhm,
Dr. Mikachu, and also on Twitch as Dr.
mhm,
Mikachu, Dr.
mhm,
Mikachu. I stream every Thursday, Pacific time, 6
mhm,
p.m.
mhm.
And we have a very chill and positive environment for creatives. Everyone there will be happy to welcome you in and support you if you're making something creative. We also sometimes play old adventure games and have some fun with cherishing the work of others that way. um, yeah, and then I same thing, on Twitter. I just, I think I don't really have like planned tweets or anything. They just happen when they happen. But I'm always happy to meet new people that um, want to hang out. Um, yeah, that would be great.
That's great. Well, thank you, Miko.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thanks for
everybody.
having me.
Thank you for coming. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This has been Everyday Expertise.
Bye.
Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this interview. Be sure to share this video with friends and colleagues who may also enjoy this topic. Let us know your thoughts by leaving a comment below or check the description for our social media. See you next time.